series under NIDHI Center of Excellence at Venture Center. The Founders Club at Venture Center is a networking and peer-to-peer learning event where startup founders can meet senior and experienced successful entrepreneurs and learn from their experiences, trials, and tribulations, and many other things that only startup founders face on a day-to-day basis. So today we have with us Mr. Dinesh Victor, who is the Managing Director of SIP Academy India, India's largest after-school skill-building organization that currently operates in 14 countries, over 350 cities in India, with over 850 franchisee centers and with around 5,000 teachers. Dinesh Victor, an IIT Mumbai and IIM Ahmedabad alumnus, chose to embark on this passionate vision, giving up a lucrative corporate career. He started his corporate career as a product manager with Godrej, working with various brands. After a short stint in sales, he moved to the finance sector, where he worked with ANZ, Grindlays Bank, and Standard Chartered Bank in consumer banking. He started his first entrepreneurial venture in Jan of 2002. A year and a half later, he incorporated SIP Academy India in 2003. One of the pioneers in after-school skill-based education for children in the primary age group, SIP Academy faced huge challenges in the early years. The programs are delivered by franchisees. 18 years later, the company has grown significantly. Over 1.2 lakh students learn from SIP every week. On the other face of his profile, Dinesh is also an avid traveler and a voracious reader. International history, politics, psychology, management are some of his favorite topics. He's equally attentive towards maintaining a good physical health. He is a marathoner, having completed 6 full marathons. Coming to today's talks, in simple sense, by franchisee, we understand that it is the kind of process or the system or methodology whereby the owner, often established brand, licenses its operations along with its products, branding, knowledge in exchange for a franchisee fee. Very well-known companies that have a global presence because of its franchises are the fast food giants like McDonald's, Subway, and Domino's. Via today's talk, we are going to take a deeper dive into understanding what is franchising, how does it work, how do one knows if their business is meant for such a model. But before we get started with today's session, few ground rules to remind all of you. Please keep yourself on mute mode and video switched off throughout the event so that you do not distract the speaker. Only unmute yourself when requested by the organizers. We want you to maximize your learnings and takeaways from the session, so please do not hesitate to ask questions. Keep posting your questions throughout the session in the chat box. Speaker will discuss the questions at an appropriate time of the session. So without further ado, I'm requesting Mr. Victor to start with today's talk on building a franchising business, tips and pointers for entrepreneurs from the SIP Academy experience. The floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, Soma. So I have a presentation because always, I like to structure my thoughts and try to give it in a way that is easy for people to also digest. So let me quickly start sharing my presentation. I hope this is clear for all of you. It's clear, right, Soma?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So let me start by firstly thanking you all. And who do I want to thank? I firstly want to thank, no doubt, Premnath, and obviously the Venture Center for the amazing work that you people have done over the last 15 years. I've just got to know recently, I've known Premnath for many years because we were in college together. But I never knew, I kind of lost touch, and I got back in, I think about 4 to 5 years back, I got back in touch with him. And the kind of work that you and Venture Center have done is really amazing. And it's really an honor to be called by you all to speak to hopefully budding entrepreneurs. And entrepreneurs are actually, in my view, one of the most important segment of a nation, a society. And I wouldn't say only people who start a business, no doubt they're entrepreneurs, but I think everybody who today works, whether you're a manager or you're running a business or you're an employee, you need to have that mindset of an entrepreneur. And there's a very nice quote I got from one of the famous management thinkers, Peter Drucker. I thought I want to share that with all of you, just as a start off. See, what he said is we need an entrepreneurial society in which innovation and entrepreneurship are normal steady and continuous. And that's a very powerful statement, simply because he doesn't say that it's a unique thing. It should be by some people, it should be by a few people, but actually it is something that should be seen as normal, steady, and continuous. It's really a huge thing. And I think Venture Center has done a lot of work towards this area. So thanks so much for calling me, and thank you all for listening. So what will my talk cover? So I'm going to spend a little time on what is franchising. I guess most of you know it, but still I thought it's good to start with the basics of what is franchising. Why franchising? What businesses are amenable to franchising? And that's a very simple perspective that I want to share. And a little bit of our own history of what we do, and some key learnings from our experience with a specific focus from the franchising part. Otherwise, there's a lot of learnings, but I want to spend too much time on those stuff. But what is specifically for our franchising stuff? And I want to end up with some conclusions. So I'm actually clear. The talk, I'm going to spend some time assuming that the people who are listening to are either interested in the idea of either starting a franchise or franchising their business, or they've started franchising to some extent, but they don't know how to take it to the next stage. So and my whole talk is going to be based on that kind of an audience are listening to me. So, and then obviously I'll leave it for a lot of questions and answers, which I hope you'll all have. So what is franchising? So Soma mentioned this, but I just want to define that. This is a classical definition of franchising. It's a method of distributing a product or a service. And that's very important. It could be a product or a service which involves a franchisor. And what is the role of a franchisee? It establishes the brand's trademark or trade name and a business system. And a franchisee who pays a royalty and often an initial fee for the right to do the business under the franchisee's name and system. So for some of you, it may be a little long and complicated, but it's a very precise definition. But for most of you, I think let's simply just keep 3 keywords in your mind. One is the word franchisor. So it gives the brand to be franchised. 2 is a franchisee who uses that brand. And 3 is the royalty, which is the money the franchisee pays to the franchisor for using the brand. So I think if you just keep these 3 words in mind, you'll get the whole idea of franchising. And just to put the same thing in a diagramic form, you have the customers at the bottom, who are customers. They pay money to the franchisee, and the franchisee uses a significant part of the money to run their own business and their own expenses. And they pay a royalty to the franchisor. So that is how the money flow happens in a franchise business. So just to give you a diagrammatic picture of how this actually works. Now, why do people do franchising? This is a good question. And I would like some amount of interaction also. So it'll be great if somebody can tell me, when someone can unmute and quickly tell me, why do you think franchising happens? Why does franchising happen? Why should a company franchise itself?
Can I suggest that people can just raise their hands, use the...
It doesn't matter. Yeah. Just one comment is enough. I'm not looking for 2 comments. See 1 or 2, just to see if you guys are with me in what I'm speaking. You can just unmute, save 2 words, and then go back to mute. No harm. So why do companies need to franchise themselves? You don't need to raise your hand. Just say it, Sujitra. You can just...
I think they might be on mute. So that's...
Or you'll need to unmute them. Fair enough. Okay. So you can raise your hands, unmute them.
Yeah, so to explore the market.
Explore the market. But why do you need to do it by franchising? You can do it yourself. Why do you want a franchisee for that?
Existing resources, the region resources they can use, and they can cater to that market.
Yeah. Let's get
partly
one.
Right. You're partly right, but can you be a little more specific? You're quite close. It's very important. You must understand this concept very well. Why should their company franchise its brand?
Let's hear some others also. Yeah. So Raghavendra, your
expansion. Yeah, somebody's written in the group. I saw expansion, expertise.
To scale up fast.
So why can't you scale up? Why do you need a franchisee to scale up? You just go ahead and scale up.
No, resources are divided. They put the resources in that. So it is fast expansion basically.
You can expand as a company. Today there are so many companies are expanding. Byju's is expanding. There are so many companies are expanding. Reliance is expanding. You can expand. Why do you need to have a franchise to expand?
Yeah. To de-risk your expansion.
I think the simplest answer is you don't have money. It saves capital for the franchisor. See, to expand, you need capital. Understand this fundamental point. You need money to invest in an office, in people, in a sale team, everything else. So imagine if McDonald's had to set up 25,000 outlets, how much money they've got to invest. They don't have that kind of money, and they don't have that kind of energy to do all that work. So the simplest answer is you franchise it so that the other person can actually invest that money and you can take a royalty. I think this is a critical aspect that I want anybody who's looking at a franchise business. It is a win-win situation for both sides. And the franchisor also needs a franchisee. Otherwise, they cannot expand because they don't have the capital to invest. So you don't have to invest in a place, in a team, in staff and all that stuff. Now, why does a franchisee want to get into a franchising? Fine, this I can understand from a franchisor perspective, it helps. Okay, fine, I don't have the money, I don't have that much of capital to invest. Or if I take, it'll take a long time to build that, save that money and invest in a business. But why should a franchisee look for a franchisor? They can run their own business.
There's a comment, standardized business model.
So what's the benefit from a standardized? That is, we know that, but what is the benefit for a standardized business? That's a good theoretical point. But what is the benefit for a franchisee to start it? You're right. Dipankar is perfectly written. It saves effort and money for building brand. Very true. And at a very simple level, it's a ready-made business. So it's far easier to attract a customer. Now, if I were to open a Pizza Hut pizza shop and a non-Pizza Hut pizza shop, which is easier to attract customers? It's obvious. Most customers would like to go to Pizza Hut than a new pizza shop that has opened up. So the cost for building a brand and investing in the whole technology, everything is so much more complicated for a new business. It's far more easier to invest and sign up with a franchisee, far easier for them to run the business and scale up because they have a ready-made business and ready-made customers. That's the key point. So remember this. This is very important, and I'll come back to it later. The key thing is the franchisee looking to buy a brand because he can get customers easily. And the key reason a franchisor is looking for a franchisee is that they want a franchisee to invest their capital in the business. So that's the key. These two key thoughts I want you to keep in mind as I go along. And remember, every franchisee is also an entrepreneur. He is also investing his money, taking a risk. Yes, he's hoping the risk is less simply because he's taking an established brand. But there is a risk. It may not work, it may work. And that's a risk that he has got to take. Now, as somebody mentioned, I think Soma mentioned in a talk, what businesses are currently being franchised? And I want to quickly skip. You'll be surprised that there are thousands of businesses being franchised, both globally and also in India. And it's across industries. It's not like restricted to one industry. Food, beverages, education, retail, travel, tourism, fitness, healthcare. You've got a whole lot of businesses where you have franchised businesses. So just to give you, these are the big names. McDonald's is one of the largest franchisees globally. And you have even in India, Cafe Coffee Day is franchisee. KFC is well known. So these are all international brands. Education, very common. Almost every preschool your child goes to is a franchise for preschool. So the Kidsy, Eurokids, you have Kumon, which is a global franchise. Even Delhi Public School, many of you may not know, is a franchisee. So it's not that they said their own thing. There is somebody else who manages in transit and then they pay a fee. So that's how Delhi Public School has scaled up by having so many centers across India. Healthcare. So these are all, you will think that they are run by the same company, Dr. Batras, but actually they are franchisees who are using the brand of Dr. Batras or MedPlus or Patanjali Ayurveda also. And beauty care, you have all kinds of salons across the country. All of them are franchised. VLCC, one of the old and names that you may remember from 10, 15 years ago. And then you have the Natural Stonian guy, which is more a new franchise. And in retail, you have all kinds of franchise shops in retail. You have Chroma, you have Amul, MI, and so many of these retail shops, Lenskart, who look for people who will invest and they will use the Lenskart brand to make money for themselves. So with all this information, let me ask you, or maybe share with you, what businesses can be franchised? Can anyone raise their hand? What businesses can be franchised? It's a little hard question. It's not a very easy question. Maybe somebody can try this.
Yeah, please feel free to raise your hands or drop
I'll give you 30 seconds. If no one raises their hand, I'll give you the answer.
There's some messages in the chat box.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. Consumer business, any scalable business. Okay.
Yeah, Satish Pathak, you want to go?
Yeah. Service industry.
Yeah.
Satish.
Actually, anything that moves fast is preferred for franchising.
Any business which can be repeated.
Yeah.
Excellent point, which is repeated. But there's one more aspect I want to add. Okay. Let me give an example. You think Google search can be franchised?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. So it's not that every business can be franchised. So let me tell you what I think, what business can be franchised. It's actually almost any business, but there are 2-3 criteria for this business. So one is you need distribution network, and that's very important. See, Google doesn't need a distribution network because through the internet, anybody can access Google. But most other businesses need a distribution network. So many internet-based businesses where you actually go to the net and do stuff, you don't need to actually build. That's why these businesses are very, very, very successful and very happy because investors are very happy because you don't have to invest in building a distribution network. But there are many businesses where you can't do that. You need to build a distribution network. And what does the network have? The network requires a direct and exclusive interaction with the end customer. This is also very important. Now, for example, you have a retail shop and I'm going to sell some products to a retail shop. Then I don't need to be a franchising. I can just, Colgate can make a Colgate toothpaste, sell it to any shop. There's no need for a franchise there because there is already an existing distribution network. And that distribution network caters to customers who come and buy various products. And one of the products is good in that shop is Colgate toothpaste. So you guys go buy a toothpaste. So Colgate doesn't need a franchising. But there are many businesses where you need direct and kind of exclusive interaction with the end customer. So whether you think of Pizza Hut or you think of Kidsy, you need an exclusive interaction with the end customer. And obviously, the cost of building your own employee distribution network is very high. And maybe the risk is also high. So you want a business which has got these 3 criteria. And then you can actually think of a franchise business. Is it clear to you all?
Yes, I think very clear. But anybody
It's
else?
a little different from what you thought when you started off.
No, I think you're addressing all the points which are important. Please go ahead.
Yeah, that's my idea. So you guys can capture the key points, so you know that. So wherever you need, especially the direct and exclusive interaction with your end customer, you need to think of franchise business. Now, let me tell you a little bit about our experience. So we started way back in 2003 in Chennai in a very small way. And like every other startup, we had our huge challenges in the early years. We had very little capital, and hence the question of having our own centers were out of question because we had very little capital ourselves anyway. So we had no choice but to get into the franchise mode. And our first program that we started off was what we call the SIP Abacus program. It was an after-school program for children in the ages 6 to 12 and run usually on weekends. So I have a short video, it's about a 3-minute video, which will give you a quick idea of what our program does. And I want to just play that video for all of you.
Random 2-digit numbers, and I'm going to keep adding it to itself. I'm going to be narrating its table as quickly as I can.
Oh.
So give me the total number.
28.
28. You can do that too. All right. 28, 56, 84, 112, 140, 168, 196, 224, 252, 283, 308, 336, 364, 392, 420, 448, 476, 504, 532, 560, 588, 616, 644, 672, 700, 728, 756, 784, 812, 840, 868, 896, 924, 952, 980, 1008, 1036, 1064, 1092, 1120.
Abacus is very useful to me in my school. So I do many sums with abacus, and so I have become the class topper in many times.
Large part of the life has been impacted by the SIP program and how I went through the different levels. It has taught me a lot more than just calculating quickly. It has taught me about persevering for being the best among people, thinking and breaking the barriers of what seemed impossible back then. I've never looked back ever since.
If you see how our SIP program works with children, we train children using numbers. So we make them do simple arithmetic calculations, like for example, additions, subtractions. For example, a sum like 3 plus 2 plus 5, or a little more complex like 23 plus 57 plus 63 minus 44. Now when a child does a sum like this, already there is a certain amount of work that he has to do to concentrate to get the answer right. And this happens week after week, week after week, for a year, year and a half, 2 years, or even 3 years. And you can see the level of concentration the child develops is quite phenomenal.
Iman, class 7A student, he's a maths wizard. 157 plus 295 plus 467 plus 903 minus 512 plus 168 minus 409 plus 891 plus 335 minus 120 plus 444 plus 749. Well,
3368.
Absolutely right, 3368.
So I guess you got an idea of our program. It looks like a complicated program, or how do you actually get kids to do this? But we've actually used that program, and we've actually franchised this program, and we have now little over 750 centers across India. We're there in about 23 states and more than 350 cities. In Pune, where the venture center is based, is one of our earliest, early cities we entered way back in 2005, and we have a lot of centers in Pune actually right now. And you may find some center in your neighborhood in Pune itself. How do our centers look like? If you look at our SIP abacus, so they have a look and feel. So if you just quickly, I'll just show you. So this is how our centers look from outside, and this is how the reception look, and that's how actually our classrooms look like. And you can see children actually learning, and there's a teacher who's teaching the kids in the classroom. So it's actually a classroom based, like I mentioned, is an after school program. So kids would like to use this. I mean, they come on a Saturday or Sunday for about 2 hours, and they learn something and they take this forward. The other program that we have is called Global Art. So this is the other franchise program. This we started about 2 years later in 2005, and this is the logo. And it's a very similar program which helps develop creative thinking in children via art. And we also are reasonably well distributed, not as well distributed as the abacus program that's far more widely distributed, but we still are reasonably well distributed with about 120 centers in about 7 states. And there's a short 1-minute video on what this program does. It's pretty unique and quite interesting, and you'll find it pretty interesting to watch this.
This is a farm. In the farm there are many watermelons. The farm is completely protected by the fence. This is a farmer's house. The path which is connected from the home to the farm. The weighing machine tells the customers how much the food weighs, and the plastic bag tells the customer. So they can put the food in and take home. This is a board which has a watermelon on it, which tells the customers that this is a fruit shop. There are proper hygiene standards maintained in this shop. I convert the watermelon picture into an object sharpener, and I also added pencil, eraser, book stand and pencil stand.
So it's also a pretty interesting and unique program, something which is quite, I would say, needed for kids for today. And how do our centers look like? So we have actually exclusive centers. So they also look pretty nice. And this is how the outside of the center looks, nice big board out there. And this is how the classroom looks. And you can see children sitting there. Right now, they're wearing a mask also. And this is how the reception of the center is. So it's quite nice, colorful. And this is something international. This is running in many other countries. So we've actually taken the franchise to run this in India. Now, I just want you to also now, you've seen all the hard stuff, but I want to actually meet some of our people. I want you to just see and hear some of our franchisees speak. And these are some of our franchisees. I've just taken a spattering from across the country. You'll have some in the West, some in the South, and some in the East. Just one or two. And you'll just get a sense of what these people speak to. And it'll be good to sense to just hear them speak.
इससे मुझे सबसे ज़्यादा यह फायदा हुआ है कि सिप एकेडमी से मैं एक कॉन्फिडेंट बन गई हूँ और उसके साथ ही मुझे सिप एकेडमी ने टाइम मैनेजमेंट ये सिखाया है, जिससे मैं मल्टीटास्कर बनी हूँ और इससे मेरी एक आइडेंटिटी बनी है जो मुझे अपने आप के लिए और मेरे परिवार के लिए खुशी की बात है। सिप एकेडमी एक ऐसी संस्था है जो बच्चों के प्रति 100% dedicated रहती है।
After my retirement in 2005, I wanted to do something in the field of education. My search for that ended in joining the SIP family. I started one center in 2005 at Pattam with 75 students. Now there are around 1,000 students at the Pattam center. To become a part of SIP was one of the best decisions that I have taken in my life, because it gives me happiness and satisfaction. All the team members, right from the MD in the corporate leadership and those in the state sector, are helpful, friendly, and above all, inspiring. This makes my work as LCL easy and enjoyable.
Homemaker turned entrepreneur and a part of the Happy SIP Abacus family since 2009. I manage a total of over 800 students across my 3 SIP Abacus centers. SIP has helped me realize many dreams as a mother, a homemaker, a teacher and an entrepreneur into a pleasant reality. Quest for an independent identity and sense of fulfillment made me choose SIP for a career. Today I am proud of my achievements and contributions in grooming young generation.
Franchisee for Global Art KK Nagar and Poru since 2006, which is over 12 years now, and working along with SIP has earned lot of awards and accolades for me, and it has shaped me into a strong and confident individual and has earned name and fame within my family. Why I chose to get associated with SIP is definitely the sound product, ideology, and of course the profitable business model. The best part I like being a franchisee is the freedom of thought and expression, which is being respected, and of course being implemented if it is practical.
Great. So I think this itself would give you a great idea of what we do and what we've done. I think listening to the franchisee speak itself will give you a lot of idea of what it requires to build a franchise business. But let me try to, convert it into some kind of a theory for all of you. So additionally, I want to also add that the last 2 years were a major challenge, not only for us, I'm sure it's for the entire world. And we had a serious challenge because we've never ever done business online. All our businesses were in classrooms, as the pictures you saw. And we had to transform the entire business to online from our original in-person classes. And we managed all the processes along with that. I guess many organizations also did that. And across all the towns we were present in, we were present in so many towns, training, everything actually, all the events we did, marketing, everything we had to change without actually leaving our homes. And broadly, I just want to add 2 points here. Innovative mindset and also technology. Both were critical helps in this transformation. So this is something that happened in the last 2 years. And that actually allows us and our franchisees to now operate in a hybrid model, which means we can actually quickly close everything and still run. Otherwise, we are happy to open and also still run. And we can kind of seamlessly move across both formats without much of a problem. And we saw that in January this year, when suddenly again we had all the lockdowns and we were quickly able to close and then come back again in late February without much of a problem. So now the key question, how did we reach so far in the past 18 years and what did we do? And I think all of you would be interested to listen to that. So there are many factors, but I want to focus on the franchising part alone. I don't want to focus on others because otherwise the talk will just go on and on. So I just want to spend on 5 critical elements of building a franchise business. And I think this is what I want to spend some time for all of you. So what is the first thing? A lot of people think the first thing is marketing. Actually, it's not marketing. The first thing is economics. What I mean by economics? Come up with a good sharing of the customer fees that is fair to both the franchisee and the franchisor. And this is not an easy task. Because always as a franchisor, you want to take a big share, and always as a franchisee, you want to take a big share. How do you get a share which is fair? Takes you some time to work that out depending on the business that you're in. And the key for this is the franchisee should break even quickly. It shouldn't take very long to break even for a franchisee. So that's the key, I would say the key thing that you must keep your mind in. No doubt we had a lot of challenges in getting this right initially because we were also new and we had no, I would say, no books or no one to give us any gyan or any advice. And so we had to really figure it out ourselves. And with some initial experiments where we got a few things wrong and a lot of talks, we finally got that right. And this also evolves with time. So as time changes, while the sharing is similar, but you will find other places where you'll have to debate and share when it comes to marketing, when it comes to other expenses and stuff like that. And this is something that you need to be open to be thinking and changing with time. So this is the first key, I would say, the economics. The second key is again not marketing, it's actually quality. Now, why I'm saying quality? I think this is very important. For what reason? Why do you want to ensure your product quality is at a really high level? Whichever program or product you're running with. Simply because your end customer is key for your business to sustain. So remember, the end customer is the key person who's actually paying the money, not the franchisee. So they need to be happy, and they will only be happy if your product quality is great. So focus on that. Get the product quality great and think how you're going to get this right when you scale up. And that's not easy. You can run it in one center or a few centers, but getting it right in 800 centers, 900 centers is not an easy task. So you must spend some time to think and put the systems in place to get the product quality right. So when you scale up also, the quality doesn't suffer. So what we do in our organization is we spend a lot of time, money, and thought on training of our teachers. I would say I spent the first 7-8 years focusing much more on quality than on marketing in SIP actually. And that actually really is paying dividends now for us in big ways. So this is key. Spend a lot of time in focusing on quality. You don't need to spend as much time as I did. You hopefully would spend a little lesser time, but just make sure that's right. And we also have assessment for teachers and regular annual upgradation and training. So we spend a lot of money, effort, and thinking on actually getting our teachers right. That's the key for the customers to be happy. The third, no doubt, is marketing. So now that you have a good economic model and then you have a good quality of your product, you must obviously focus on marketing. And there are 2 aspects of marketing. A lot of franchisees focused on only one aspect, and that is getting the branding right. And that's no doubt very important. So like you saw the pictures I showed you, the look and feel of the centers, they should be similar. They should look, attractive. They should be, nice and all that stuff. And that's very important so that, and you can see a lot of that when you walk around. And it's important to get that right. But also parallelly, you also need to see other aspects. How the franchisee responds to customers. How do they answer questions? How do they actually handle the final end consumer? Those are the aspects you should also pay a lot of attention to, not just the outside look and feel. And that also takes a lot of time, energy, and no doubt training and all that stuff to get that right. So I would say branding is two elements. One is just what you see, and two is the people interaction with the customers, final customers. Both actually build your brand. And nowadays, I would say nowadays, because this is in the last 3-4 years, also the social media profiles of the franchisee, how you need to give them some consistent stuff. So it's not just the branding of the space, but also they all would have some local social media, their Google My Business or their Facebook page. Both need to be pretty well branded and have a similar kind of look and feel across your centers. The other aspect which a lot of people don't pay attention, but that's very important, is actually getting customers. A lot of people think this is just the job of the franchisee. Now that I'm a franchisor, I've given you a franchise, but that's actually not something that we've learned in our experience. So getting customers for the franchise is actually, I would say, a joint responsibility. At least in our experience, it's been a joint responsibility. We also need to create a larger brand, but a franchisee also needs to do local marketing. And in the early years, we had a challenge because we didn't have the money to spend on brand. So we had to spend a lot of time in actually doing presentations in schools, local societies, events, where we could actually talk to direct consumers and get them to join for our program. Nowadays, we are larger, so we can do a lot more interesting stuff. Like, we do some national level events. We do a lot of advertising, social media. We get references and stuff like that. So we are able to do it much better now, simply because of the time you spent, and we have a lot of videos and stuff like that. So it's kind of easier to convince customers today, much easier to convince customers today. The fourth key, this is again a lot of early startups miss, is money, collecting money. Because you have got the franchisee to collect the money, but you as a franchisor also need to know how to collect money from your franchisee. And this can cause a lot of issues, and if you don't think through and get this right. So you need to have a good system, a good process to collect money from your franchisees. Because this is, let's face it, the lifeblood of the system. If you don't collect regularly, you're stuck. And this also, you need to spend some time and think through this process. So earlier days, it was harder for us to collect money, a lot of phone calls, follow up, Excel sheets and stuff like that. Now, over the years, we've developed internal softwares, and we have an online cloud-based system which helps us to collect money far more easily from the system. But yes, it is still an area where we need to focus and we need to keep our eye on always as an organization. One simple idea that I can tell you is you can collect money in exchange for a product. So that's kind of easier, even if you're doing a service. So can you think of some product which is critical for the service, which can actually help you collect the money? So for example, in our business, the simple thing was we used to give books because children need books to study. So we could collect a significant proportion of our income, of the royalty also through books. It could be anything similarly critical for you. You need to think through your business and see what's critical by which you can collect the money. But you need to have the system right, because only then you can actually ensure that your business is also running smoothly. The fifth key, again, a lot of people miss this, is good relationships. This is again, I see a lot of franchisors don't really focus on this too much. And that's something that we learned in SIP from the early years, is key for us to build a good, healthy franchise business. So the key I remember is treat every franchisee with respect. Remember, each of them are also entrepreneurs. They're also investing and taking risk. So we need to treat them with a lot of respect. Be transparent and fair in your policies and actions. Again, a hard one, usually. So most people, this reads a lot. It's not easy to be transparent and fair, because then you also need to be open to suggestions and stuff like that. And that's the key. Third key is you need to communicate constantly. So early years, I used to travel a lot, and most of our office people used to meet a lot. A lot of visits, travels across the country, across centers. That's important. because only then you get an understanding of people, talk to them. Nowadays, thanks to Zoom, we can do a lot of that without actually having to travel. But yes, that was not available with us in the early years. And also be open to both giving and taking feedback, because markets are dynamic. A lot of things change, customer preferences change, and you need to be open to change by listening. And only the franchisee is actually meeting the end customer. You're not. So you need to be open to listen and then see what little changes you can make so that you can actually get the business get back the business on the right track for everybody. So that's also key, to have good relationships. The other hidden benefit of a good relation we found for ourselves over the last many years is you will have a lot of disputes as you go along. But if you have good relationships, disputes can get settled much more easily and much more faster. You don't need to go to court to sort out issues, except it's a really rare case where you can't manage it. So over the years, we've had more than 1,500 franchisees. I think I've just once gone to court over the last 18 years. And that also was actually a relationship issue, which actually we didn't handle it properly in the beginning. So really, if you have a good relationship with you don't really need to court, because if you go to court, you got to waste a lot of money and time and energy, especially in India, where things go much slower. You just, and the systems are, if it's in a small town, you have to travel to that town. It's really not worth it. Unless it's really a very critical thing that you need to go to court. But generally, it's really a waste of time. So it's best you have good relationships and settle them fairly. You don't then need to go to court. And finally, one more aspect I want to add to the whole story. This is really how to run the business. But you want to maintain the business. I think one critical component is training your franchisees. Don't assume I've taken them once, so they're good, they'll manage. It's not true. They have the money, they came in, but they may not have the understanding as the markets change, as things change. So you need to be open to train your franchisees on a regular basis. And that's something that we've done quite a lot, and we want to do even more in the years ahead. The key is constant training. So we have a lot of structured trainings for franchisees to help them improve their skills. Because many of them they're first generation entrepreneurs. They've never run a business before. They don't have a background of running a business. So we need to do a lot of trainings for them and constantly train them on all things also. How to speak to parents and how to handle issues and all kinds of stuff. When we come up with anything new, any new marketing idea, we need to do a detailed training, mock and all that stuff. And this is really key as an organization grows. And also this helps the system to align to the larger goal. So you may have a larger goal, larger focus, larger purpose. So when you do a lot of these trainings, meet them, talk to them, it actually aligns your system, especially as you scale up. Otherwise, you'll have one part of the country doing something completely different from another part of the country. And you can't manage to integrate the whole process system together if you don't spend this time training and communicating with them. So let me for a minute rest and ask you all any doubts or clarification on what I've spoken till now. Because I've spoken a lot of big stuff, so I just want to spend a little time. Is it clear? Is there anything that you didn't understand, so that I can kind of stop for a minute? And I've got just 2-3 slides more to close.
I think there are some questions, but those are more. You can. So let me just read it out for you, and then you can address it, right?
Yeah. Let me see if it's relevant to what I've spoken. Because I saw somebody saying, "I want to run a business. I want help." That's not what.
No. Yeah. So in all of this, whenever you're talking about franchisees and working with them, their reporting of data also must be important.
Extremely important
in terms of how accurate it is and so on. And how do you ensure that those processes work with honesty and earnestness, and that you are getting what is due to you, and they are being fair as well?
That's why I said the first part of economics and collection. This is not an easy answer. There's no simple answer. So you got to work that out. You got to spend time. You got to travel. You got to discuss. You got to have some data formats. You got to be intelligent in managing the data with other data. You have to correlate the two pieces of data. So you got to do some, each of the business is slightly different, and each needs a separate thought on how you can correlate the two. And mentally, you also need to be open that some amount of money without a proper system, you may lose out. So you may not collect everything on day one because you don't have a perfect system on day one. But as you improve your systems, you will be collecting only 70%, but you improve it, you may collect to 85% and then 90%. And you should be happy with anywhere around 90-95% of what the parent actually pays. If you're able to collect, you should be pretty happy with that. And finally, the solution is technology. You need to create technology which will actually help you when you scale up. You can't solve this by pen and paper and Excel sheets. It's not a solvable problem with that. And yes, in the early days, spending money on technology, you may not have the money to invest on a big piece of technology unless you are very well funded, in which case you can invest on some technology also parallelly to ensure that you can collect it better. But yes, for most people, it is a challenge and it is something that you need to work with, live with some losses, I would say. Don't get too senti about it. But yes, if it's too much, then you'll have to close it or you'll need to take some strong action, maybe close the franchise. But in general, I would find in India, people don't, it's not that everybody cheats. You have some proportion of cheats, but that's not a very large percentage. That's a smaller percentage. Most people genuinely haven't collected properly and hence they have not paid. So trust your people. You may make a few mistakes, but it's worth it because you do get 90%. You're 90% right. I don't know if this helps, but that's what it is.
Yeah, definitely. There'll be also other questions which will come up. I want to reserve some for after you're done
when I finish,
with your talk.
Yeah.
But also, if you might want, I just thought maybe you can talk also about, every franchise, whatever you're offering people, there is an IP around it, right? And also some processes. How did you shape that up? Do you want to comment on that part in the sense of what's being provided as a know-how of some kind, right? And in whatever form, and also the processes that you follow and how do you codify them? How do you make it systematic?
So I'll come to the IP at the end, but that's more an independent question of what I've spoken till now. Okay. Because I would say a lot of people are very much keen on IP, and that's true. It's an important aspect. I'll spend a little time on IP a little later, but I want to spend some little time. If whatever I've spoken, is there any doubt in what I've spoken till now? And IP is an important part. I'll handle it as part of the larger questions at the end.
Yeah, but by the way, Dinesh, just as a clarification, I don't mean formal IP. I just mean even your own processes. And
I know. I'll come to both of them. I'll come to both. Both are important.
Yeah,
the informal ones are actually more important, no doubt.
Yeah. And I think there's also about revenue models. Did you want to comment on that? One question is there on.
So what's the specific question on revenue model that you want me to comment on?
So I think they're asking, what is your specific example? What is the basic revenue model? You mentioned royalties, but do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Oh, okay. It's something like typically a parent pays a certain amount of fees, and a proportion of that, around 21-22% is what we collect, and the balance the franchisee keeps.
And are there multiple layers, or is it a very simple model? Is there multiple layers of structuring involved?
There are multiple layers of structuring, but that's internal because we need distribution in different markets. So we'll have a reasonably complex way of sharing that money with the local area that is actually managing the franchisee. But for a franchisee, it's a simple model. It's around 22% of the monthly fees, around that range that they pay for the fees that they collect. It's a little more complex in India, slightly because of the GST. Some centers pay GST, some don't pay GST. But okay, but I'll just give you a broad idea. It's around that range for whoever is asking this question. That's the model that we use. So some other organizations maybe have it a little higher, some maybe even a little lower, but ours is around that range.
And you also specify the look and feel of the organization.
Yes.
Of each center, everything.
Center, yeah. That's key. Because otherwise, that's very important to ensure that the parent who comes in doesn't see this as a different center. So they go to the website or they come through some common advertising. And when they visit the center, they should have a sense that this is similar to, this is the same center that I saw on the website or somebody spoke to me about it.
Yeah.
And there is
when you're choosing your franchisees, do you look also at their value systems? How do you gauge who's the right person to go with, right? There's a question on those rough lines, but I'm just reframing.
I know. I'll come to that. I have a slide on that and I'll explain that point in a little more depth.
Okay.
A lot of people, before you start a business, have a lot of big ideas of these kinds of stuff. But the simple answer is get a franchise first. it's not that easy to convince someone to invest money in your business. So you don't worry too much about values in the early stages. Worry about getting a franchisee. Once you get a franchisee, then you understand whether, value. And values are all so subjective. It's very hard for you to judge. So I never go by that. It's impossible to go by values. You'll always make mistakes. So it's unless you have some specific reason, which is very rare, that person has done something in the past. It never happens otherwise. Usually, you don't have to worry too much about values. I'm not worried. At least I have not had that problem at all. But yes, you have to worry about other stuff, whether the person has the hunger to grow, whether he's interested in running this business, whether he can communicate reasonably well to your parents, those kinds of stuff, yes, which are more measurable than whether he's got the money to invest in the business. So these are simple, more easy and measurable stuff rather than subjective stuff like values, which frankly are important, but you will go wrong if you try to use that to criteria to judge somebody.
How do you also ensure stickiness in the sense that they don't go ahead and float their own activity after, understanding what is needed to run that business?
So the key answer to that is you need to two things. One is your brand strong enough for parents to also come for your brand and not for the franchisee? So they are coming because they like the SIP Abacus program, or they like Mrs. Kalavati who runs the center there. So that's the first point, that you should have a reasonably strong brand. The second and the more important thing is, why should Mrs. Kalavati feel if I start on my own, I will earn more money? They should feel I should earn more money and I should be more, my chances of success are higher if I stay with SIP than if I start my own brand. Because if you start your own brand, then there's a good chance SIP Abacus will also put it another franchise in that area. We will do that. So what are your chances of success if we do that? So you also have that economic reason to stay with us, which is more viable and profitable than to start on your own. And the final reason is treat them well. Why should they leave you?
So I think let's continue, Dinesh. Come back towards the end.
I'll come back towards the end. Yeah. So I want to just now, the most important question nobody asked me, which I thought somebody will ask me when I stopped, was how do we get franchisees? Somebody did ask how to judge a franchise, but how do you get a franchisee? It's not easy to get a franchisee to agree to invest business and trust you and start a franchise. It's just not easy. Even though we've started so many centers, let me tell you, it's not easy to convince a franchisee to invest their time, money, and take risk and start a business with you. So what did we do? So firstly, let me tell you, there are many factors that help getting a franchisee. And in the early period of a business, a lot will come from your contacts. Not direct contacts, but indirect contacts. Somebody known to somebody who knows you. Why is that? Because when you're starting something, people will believe you more than they will believe the business concept. So they are coming because, okay, he's his friend, he started a business, it's reasonable success. So they are coming more for that reason. So remember this, initially you will get people because they believe in you. So that's important that you also live up to that belief. But yes, as we grow larger, then you can advertise. Now you can spend some money on social media, or maybe some little bit, if you have a little more money, maybe put a paper ad or a larger ad or a video or something like that. And another great way you will get franchisees is if your existing franchisees are doing well, they are comfortable, the business is doing good, they will refer new franchisees. You can also get some franchisees from your customers. So you will get from, and this is an important part because a lot of people do think, where do we get franchisees from? So let me quickly conclude. It's kind of almost an hour since I started talking. So franchising is a great way to expand your business, especially if you're capital starved, or you want to protect your capital for something else, and you want to actually still expand your business quickly. But you need to get a few, I would say 4 or 5 key factors right. Only then you can scale up your business quickly. Otherwise, you'll get stuck while scaling up your business, or it will not just scale up. It just, start with a few and then you'll get stuck somewhere. Now I have truly time for questions, and I'm going to stop share and come back.
Okay, first of all, Dinesh, thank you very much for agreeing to speak. Before I'll request Shoma also to collect some questions as we take up questions. But really grateful to you because this is the first time we are doing one on franchising. And it's better to hear from somebody who has really done it, right? Who else than you? So,
True.
Thanks for doing that. And also, I think you made it quite simple to understand.
Exactly.
That's great.
I've tried to keep it very simple, except for the first page of definition. There's not a single definition on the slides.
Okay. So I just wanted to, there are people who will be in the early stages of their business. So I just wanted to ask you to go back a little bit when you got started, right? Couple of things. One, when you got started, did you think that right away that it should be a franchising business?
Right from day one, because I didn't have capital.
Okay. So, but you had made up your mind right then, right? So
exactly.
Yeah. And did you were there other such programs available at that time?
Yes, there were other such programs available at that time, and they also were into the similar kind of idea of starting franchisee. Way back in 2003, we did have similar competitors, though in the own Abacus business, and we did have those days, very early days, we had these big, I would say, IT training franchisees, NIDHI and Aptech. But they were for kind of college students and stuff. But there was none at the school-going kids franchisee. So the Abacus was one of the first school-going franchise businesses in India.
And when you got started with brand building, right? So this is a sort of like a B2C kind of a thing, right? In the sense,
exactly,
you're really going to the end customer and advertising. So how does a small company really make a dent in the very beginning? What did you do to build your brand in the early years when what did it take to?
So the early years, I think the biggest thing we did was quality of delivery. So people spoke that this program through SIP is helping my child do something which no one else is able to do. So the early days of our program was not branding and marketing. It was actually program delivery, which made people come back and say, wow, there's something great. The second thing we did well was we also tried to cluster and have it in a few places where we could scale up more rather than go all over the place. So if you start in some place, we would try to scale up that area in that city. So you would have a lot of flyers, a lot of presentations, a lot of that stuff happening. So that also built the brand up. So it was more of word of mouth and more of the hard way of building the brand in the early years, because you don't have the capital. Okay, we did have a website. We had an agency which used to give some standard designs, but not too much money spent on advertising and stuff like that, like you would call a typical traditional brand. And to be honest, it's only a little later we got into proper center branding and stuff like that, not from day one. It took some time. Initially, we were still, anybody comes, we were happy. Okay, fine, you have a classroom, you have a space in a home or in a school, start a center. Because the business was a challenge first. But once we stabilized the business, then the challenge was how do we increase the price? How do we differentiate ourselves? That's how we got into branding, the technology, and all kinds of stuff.
Did you directly, so in all these cases, have you gone directly to the end customer, that's a parent, or have you also gone via influencers? Did you use that route as well? Does it
work?
No,
we didn't, because we didn't really use that rate, because no one knows our program to influence. And there were no influencers in those days anyway. Social media is a much recent creation.
But would schools play a role?
Schools did play a role, but schools also were, there were some schools which were supportive. That they gave us space to advertise, in the sense they gave us space to talk to parents.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. You guys are convincing me, but I can't speak for you. But I'll give you a chance. I'll send a flyer out, ask the parents to come on a certain day, and you can come and speak to the parents. And they would do that. Or we would organize an event, maybe a coloring competition, and parents would come with their kids, and then we would speak to the parents on that day. Or some other event where we could create, which could allow the parents to come and we could speak to them about our program parallel. So it was more about, it's a little hard on the ground, because this requires a parent. After all, a parent is putting the child into a program. They're not going to do that because it's on ad. An ad will only interest them, but they still need to know what is it all about. If I have to spend $1,500 a month to for about 4 classes, what is it all about? I have to spend this kind of money for, especially in the early years when people didn't know about a program.
In this kind of a line of business, it's very HR intensive also because of the fact that teachers are involved, right? So the center coordinator, are these the people who usually will be your seed teachers, or
usually
how do they manage their teaching talent? Because that will be such a...
So that is the other secret we had in our business. We didn't worry about talent. We worried about getting a great training system which will ensure that any person who's interested to teach will go through the process, will become a good teacher. So we spent a lot more rather than worrying about getting good teachers, because it's always hard to judge a teacher. I mean, how do you judge a teacher sitting here in Chandigarh? It's impossible. So, and you'll only get that kind of people from that area who are willing to get teach and get whatever salary that you're willing to pay them. But you can always invest a lot of your thought on getting the training right. And we did that. We spent a lot of thought on getting the training right, so that a person who otherwise would be an average person, let's put it that way, once they go through the training and the assessment, they can also teach pretty well.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of hours of training. So to give you an example, we spend over the 2 years, the teacher teaches the child for a level. For 2 years, they spend almost 28 days, full days of training with a lot of work at the night. It's quite an intense training process that they go through. And that's how they become such good teachers.
Okay. So taking your case and also some others like Subway and so on and so forth, can you tell us, so of course there's royalty, but is there also other streams like consumables and so on and so forth? Those?
Yes, there are other streams. So if you're selling,
they really matter. I mean, is it?
They do add value. They do add to the revenue, no doubt about it. Like when we start the business, we have a registration kit, which the parent gets. There's an abacus, there's a bag, there's a t-shirt. So some money that the parent pays for that. So there are some other streams of revenue, no doubt, in addition to royalty.
And they also probably help you standardize the quality as well.
No doubt about it, because you can't allow them to buy any t-shirt and any bag and anything on the ground. So you need a certain brand, right? So you need to ensure they have a same t-shirt, the same brand. Then only you create the brand also on the ground.
Okay. And are there situations where, say, somebody, you have to address complaints about a franchisee, I mean, centrally?
Oh, lots. It's a constant job.
Okay. You were going to tell us also about what is the give and take, in the sense, what is the IP, and in the sense, what you are providing them and what others and what they are bringing to the table as a franchisee. And you must have struck a balance somewhere such that their, as you said, their break even is reasonably fast.
Fast,
right?
Yeah.
So
your question, let me understand your question a little more in detail. Are you asking how are you protecting your IP? Is that your fundamental question?
No, that is one part of the question. The other part of the question is that must be part of your offerings to your franchisee, right? In the sense that that is part of the deal, that I'm going to give you my processes, my know-how, and you're going to deploy it. And you'll also bring in the space, teachers, run it on a day-to-day basis.
Completely. For example, the simplest thing that we bring in is training.
Yeah.
If you're a franchisee, how do you train your teacher to teach this program? You have no clue. You don't know how to teach your program. So we bring in that high knowledge of 18 years of how to train an average person to be a great teacher. That just can't be got from any other source.
Yeah, so that's part of your secret sauce.
Exactly. Right? That's a key secret sauce.
What else is part of your secret sauce?
You want me to tell everything?
No, you can take a typical franchise business.
I'll tell you.
Any other franchisee business.
No, I'll tell you. See, obviously the biggest secret sauce was no doubt the training knowledge early years. But now it's just the brand itself. The SIP Abacus brand itself is a secret sauce because people now trust the brand. The biggest secret sauce fundamentally is trust. How do you get people to trust your brand? Customers, franchisees, teachers, employees. So once they trust that this is a brand, and that is built over time, you got to show consistent action, you got to show consistent responses, and you also need to deliver whatever you promise, whether it is to customers or to franchisees or even to employees. So when you do that consistently over time, you build trust. And when you build trust, then that's the biggest brand that you have. So it's not something that's built overnight, like people think, it can be done quickly. Yes, you can spend money. And there is a certain amount of business that comes by spending a lot of advertising money, no doubt about that. And that's what a lot of people believe when you see what's happening in the market today. But all these businesses fundamentally still have to do this parallelly to ensure they are sustainable.
And all offerings that the franchisee makes and the price points, everything is fixed by you, right?
Yes, yes.
There's no variation.
There's no variation in, no. There is variation on pricing. So if you are in Pune, you will get a certain price for the program. But if you're in, let's say, a smaller town like Sangli, it may be lesser. And if you're in Bombay, it may be higher. Simply because the cost of running a business is higher in Bombay versus cost of running a business in Pune. The rentals are higher, teachers are much more expensive. So you need to pay more. But principally, if it is 22%, it will be 22%. That will be the principle. The percentages will be similar.
And what are the liabilities to you when you're entering into an agreement with the franchisee, right? In the sense, there is an agreement, I understand, between
100%.
the franchisee and the franchisor. And that agreement also outlines certain commitments from both sides, I presume, right?
Obviously.
So those commitments from your side also might be, sometimes, if the person is not able to break even in a certain time.
So we never make financial commitments in an agreement. That's a risk that if you do that, then where is the risk of starting a business? Where are you an entrepreneur? So there is a risk you take as a franchisee when you come to the business, right? Obviously, I cannot guarantee that you will surely get, but yes, I can tell you that 80% of our centers have got it. Doesn't mean that you are in that 80%. You may be in the 20%. So you still need to take that risk as a franchise, and we never give a guarantee, but we tell them that the chances of this happening, because our history is much more, chances are very low after so many years that you will be one in that, one in that 5% or 10%. But there is a 5-6% who still don't make it. I'm not saying all make it.
By the way, Dinesh, I think you've also been on the other side, right? You're also a franchisee to probably Global Art or something.
Yes.
So how did you go about choosing from that side which one to pick for your business, right? If you're a franchisee.
So I think I didn't have much of a choice when I started off, because I was young and what I got in front of me looked exciting. I said, fine, this looks nice, and just went with it. So I didn't really spend that much time on that. But if I were to look back, and if I did have a choice, it doesn't really matter so much if you have a reasonably good brand, a reasonably good training system. That's all you need, actually. Because what do you need to start a franchisee in this program? You need some good knowledge on training, a reasonably known running system some other place. That's all. So if you see it's running in some other place, you have a good training that you can use, and you feel that this will work in the market that you are in, just go for it. You don't have to think twice about that beyond a point. But if you had a choice, then obviously you will choose someone who's giving you a higher, let's say, share of the revenue or higher royalty at a lower fixed cost, and yet is a good quality, equally good quality to run with. It's just simple. It's just an economic choice. It's not some complex stuff.
Shoma, do you have anything which you wanted to add here? Question?
No, basically, I had this question in mind. I think, you have actually explained it really well, but still I would like to understand very early stage when they do not have a brand, they do not have a loyal customer in place. How do you really assess that this is the right business? How the franchisee actually decide whether this is the right business to go ahead with, how the franchisor attracts those franchisees?
Don't do that. First, get your business right. Don't sell something you are yourself not convinced with. Get your business right. Start your own center and get a few customers and make sure that it's running well before you can think of franchising it.
That will take some time, right? Imagine.
Everything takes time. Give it time. You have to get that right. There's no shortcuts.
True. By the way, I think Lipika has put up a feedback link, so please go ahead and fill it up as well. That is useful as well.
Just for a minute, let me tell you, Soma, why I'm saying this. I'm not being flippant about it. I want to tell you it's actually very serious, because if you yourself are not convinced about your business potential, how can you expect somebody else to be convinced about it? And you can't be convinced because you talk very well. You must be convinced because you actually have seen it work. It's not a belief. It's actually some data that actually shows, yes, I can get customers. I can get them to stay with me for long, and I can get them to pay this money to me, and I can make this kind of revenue. So without that information, which is tested, you just can't, convince somebody else. And if it takes you 6 months to do that, take 6 months. If it takes you 9 months, just take 9 months. Get that right first.
How many pilots did you run on your own before you decided to go franchise?
So we were lucky because when we took this franchise, this program was already running in Malaysia. So there was already a pilot. It's not that we were the first to start off in India. So when we started off, we were lucky enough. We had a few centers, people, friends and relatives, let me put friends largely, who believed that idea and said, okay, we can start off. So we could start off reasonably quickly with initially a few people who knew you and believed you, 3 or 4 people who struck. So it was quite a lucky, I would say, in a way to start off. But some of our other programs like the Global Art, when we started off, we did have 2-3 people, but we also started our own center. We also wanted to understand that a lot more better. And we spent a lot of money and effort, and we understood it ourselves. Then we could convince others about it. And to be honest, in India, we have done that in many cities when we have started off also. Like if we started a new program in a new city, we may have started with our own center first, because we may not be able to convince a local center simply because we did something in Chennai. Doesn't mean somebody in Hyderabad will believe you, or somebody in Bangalore will believe you. So we may have to start a center there sometimes.
Okay, but there are a couple of questions which came up. I sort of kept it aside for a moment, but people want to know, how did you choose to get into Abacus? Is it because you are?
It's a long story now. If I start telling you all their stories, how I started, then you'll all get, then the idea of franchising will go away.
Did you specifically say this is the one that's going to have the most potential?
No, it's not like that. I didn't have that kind of wisdom in those days. 20 years back, I was a young man without that much of knowledge and foresight.
But perhaps you bet on the right things by thinking of things that parents would want.
And no, I think when I got into, okay, let me not get you too much into this, but when I first got into it, I was really not understanding the complete implication of this beyond a size. Now, I'll give you the reason why I said I first got into it. I first got into it with a certain set of partners, and then I had to split after a year and a half, and I had to restart it. So the first time when I got in, I didn't have that kind of knowledge. I didn't have that kind of understanding of what it is, but it looked good on Excel. Let me put it that way, very simply. It looked nice and simple on Excel. But when I actually got into the business, it was far more complex. It was not as simple as that. But the second time when I restarted, I had a lot of understanding, because by then I knew the business for a year. And that time, I really knew this can impact children significantly. The second time was very clear. So 2003, when I started the second time, I was actually far, far more clearer about how to run this business, what kind of people I'm looking for, and everything else. But I started about a year and a half in 2002. I wasn't very clear then.
Okay, great. I think now we should close. I don't see any further questions right now. There is a question about COVID times, but that's a different story.
I'll have to give you a 1-hour presentation on that.
Yeah, it's very tough times. But Dinesh, wonderful listening to you, and we are so proud of your business as well. And I think
I have 2 slides before I close.
Yes, please.
A nice positive slide for all of you. So I want to end with a quote, and this quote says, "Every successful person was once an unknown person that refused to give up on their dream." So let me end by wishing you all the best. I hope some of you are pursuing your dreams. So please, all the very best in pursuing your dreams. And thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much, Dinesh. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate you taking the time out to do this. And I can tell you it is very, very relevant for our audience right now. There were several questions, requests on this topic, and Venture Center team decided that we should be doing it. But when I thought about it, I could think only a few. So thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
No, I would love to. Once again, great work you guys are doing. I'm happy to share my knowledge.
Please visit us sometime.
I would love to. Next time I come to Pune, 100% I'm coming to your place.
Yes, do come. So Shoma, over to you.
Yeah. So thank you once again for your time, and it was really, really wonderful session. You really demystified a lot of complex thinking that we have had in the minds of the startups. So hopefully, this will clarify. We'll be very happy if you can, take up some 1 or 2 questions later if somebody comes to us.
Sure.
Yeah.
You let me know. I run my own business, so I have that much time. So if you can fix it up reasonably well, I can surely help you guys out.
That will be really great. Thank you so much. And thank you to all the participants for your patient hearing. And if you have any questions, you can send it to us. We will see how to get them answered. And yeah, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you once again.
Request everyone to please fill the feedback form. This will help us to build on our content and improve anything based on what you wish to hear. So that will help us for our future events. Please do that before you leave the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, Premnath. Bye, Prem.
See you then.